This video is going to be all about audio. I'm replacing the door speakers, the head unit, and the subwoofer speaker. This one sounds terrible. This one doesn't work at all. And this was another option, which is a subwoofer. And if you turn it on, it just farts out of here. It's absolutely terrible. It'll be interesting to see what kind of speakers in here. The one on the passenger side is completely broken anyway, but I don't know if they're the standard ones. They look like they might be aftermarket. So it looks like the answer is yes. They have been replaced previously. Hopefully this doesn't mean that the wiring to this is broken somewhere, because that could be quite tricky to replace. But they don't look that old. The rubbers are in pretty good condition. This will be interesting. I'm just going to take this speaker out and connect it up to an amplifier and see if it's actually working or if it's the wiring that's the problem. Well, I think it's safe to assume that this wasn't put in recently. It's quite badly corroded here, and particularly on the terminals. When I pulled that off, it snapped away. So I'm hoping it's the speaker is the problem. So I just hooked this up to my home amplifier, and it's a bit inconclusive, to be honest. When you touch it off the terminals, it doesn't come through initially, but if you kind of wiggle it around, it does come through. So there's a lot of surface thrust here on the terminals itself, as well as this being broken away. I'd say there's a good chance it's the speaker was the problem, but I'll know when I put in a new one, I guess. So I was just about to hook up the new speaker to this to see if the wiring is working, and I can see that the contacts here are very, very corroded on the inside, and they've already been spliced in at a previous point. So I'm just going to use the cables that came with the new speakers and replace this section here before hooking it up. So I just hooked up the new speaker and everything's working, which is great. There's no wiring issues there. It was just the connections. I mentioned before that the head unit in this car is pretty much broken, so I set about trying to replace it with something newer. You can see here that the buttons are literally falling out of this thing. It's falling apart. A number of the other ones are also loose. What's unusual about this head unit is that it's not a standard format. It's not the ISO width that you'd have on another stereo. It's narrower than that, and it also has a kind of a tapered design where it's wider at the top and narrower at the bottom with this curve. So it's quite challenging to fit a head unit into this space. This is the hole you're left with when you remove the stereo. What most people do is you can get a wider fascia that widers this whole area at the top and makes it a full ISO width. I wanted to try and keep this profile, and there's a couple of people who have made their own versions of these panels and then fitted various different stereos into it, including marine stereos. So I thought I would look into that. So here is the marine stereo, just to show you an idea of the format. It's around about the same height, definitely narrower, but not very deep, quite compact. A lot of them have this kind of circular layout with either a circular face or a square face like this. And it has absolutely every connection that you would need. Auxiliary in and out. It's got Bluetooth, lots of other features. So I just connected it up to the Honda Loom. You can get these in any motor factors. They're pretty common. Most Hondas up to about 1998 used this pattern, so you don't need to look for one specific for the Beat. The next challenge was to make a fascia that would fit this into this kind of a format, which is where this comes in. I'd actually studied product design at college, and I'd learned how to use 3D software, so I had to go back and relearn all of that because it's been so long since I used those programs. But I came up with a pretty good solution. This is the first draft. I had a friend of mine who has a 3D printer, Paul, to help me out and print this. Thanks very much, Paul. So I got a lot of things right. There was some very small issues with this first draft. The circle here was slightly too narrow, so I had to sand that back a little just for the test fit. And then I had put a kind of a sharp edge here, but also down here, which didn't fit. There is a curve, so again I sanded it back to check that that would work. I'll show you on the original head unit, it has this curve. It's hard to see in this light. So I wanted to make a part that I could put up on a public website like Thingiverse, and anybody could print it. So I went back and made the edits to the file and printed a second version. So this is the second version. Basically has some reliefs here and the curve to cater for that, and a slightly larger circle. All the mounting holes, everything. So it attaches like this. There's kind of a fascia that comes with this as well. A frame. So it slots right in, it's a tight fit. So there are mounting holes here and holes in the fascia on the other side to bolt it to. And then this frame clicks in to hide all those holes away. So unlike some of the other installations that others have done where they created this fascia as a flat piece and then mounted it externally to it so it sits proud, I wanted to have it more or less flush, so you can see from here it's pretty good. The fitment here is very tight, so it's a real press fit. It's very, very secure in there. You can see it follows all the lines. Curves down around the bottom here. Fits quite nice. So the question is, do I leave it bare just to show it was 3D printed and custom made? Or do I try and spray it with like a plasti dip or something to match this satin or matte grey colour? I might not be able to match it perfectly, so maybe I'm better off just leaving it black. What do you think? So my main objective for doing this head unit swap was to do it on a budget. There's no point in spending big money on an audio system for a convertible, in my opinion. Most of the sound and music is going to be drowned out by wind noise, tire noise. This is a small, rickety, creaky car. So just something that would work with Bluetooth and look decent is what I wanted. The head unit itself only cost me $100 from Amazon.com. The harness was only €10 to connect into the Honda connector. And this 3D printed part, obviously if you have a printer it's cheap, or maybe you know a friend or something like that, but there's online places where you can print them for reasonable prices. And also I'm going to upload this to Thingiverse so that anybody can print their own version. So all in all, a very, very cheap install. Looks pretty good in my opinion. I'll put all of the links below in the description for the head unit, the wiring harness and the Thingiverse link. So the head unit doesn't appear to be sending a signal all the way down the tunnel and into the subwoofer here. This is the amp for it, and then the speaker sits here. The speaker needs a little bit of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out this amp here. I'm going to put in a low pass filter. This is just a passive, and I'm going to run it like it's a rear speaker off this head unit. The fronts are already there in the doors, and I don't have the dash ones, so I'm just going to use this like a rear speaker. This is going to take out the high frequencies, and I can bias this front to rear to essentially turn up and down the volume on the subwoofer to get the balance right. That's the theory anyway. So this is the subwoofer speaker that sits between the two seats, and as you can see here, the rubber is really perished. It's completely separated here and cracked. If you push it in a lot of places, it actually cracks. It's so dry and hard. So this is what I'm going to use to repair it. This is a new foam surround, some speaker glue, and just a brush. So these were bought from audiofriends.com. Seem to have pretty good reviews online, so hopefully they'll work out. As you can see here, there's quite a lot of stuff has come off, but there's still some residue on here from the original glue that was used. So there's glue here on the frame and on the speaker, particularly on the underside there where it attaches. So the thing to use here to get this glue off is methylated spirits. I don't actually have any at the moment, so I'm going to get some and continue this project later on. Okay, I've got it about as clean as I'm going to get it now. I don't know whether this is just surface corrosion or whatever, but it's very clean. So I'm just going to try and fit this over the cone itself, hopefully without ripping it, before applying the glue. So as you can see, the glue is dried and the speaker is ready to install. Just tested everything here with the passive crossover. This is coming from the rear signal from the head unit and out and into the speaker. Everything seems to be working. It's not a huge volume out of it, but wasn't expecting much from a speaker this size. So I'm just going to pack it all in now. So I've decided to remove the wooden Nardi wheel, and I'm going to add on this spacer here, which will allow the new wheel to sit further away from these stalks. Ah yes, that is much better. This is the extra spacer. Lovely. So when I put on the MX5 wheel with the spacer, although it was further away from the indicator stalks, it still was a little bit too large and kind of catching against my thighs. So with this other Nardi wheel, the main thing that I didn't think fit with it was the kind of chrome center on it. So I have some plasti left over from previous projects, so I thought, well, why not just spray the center, put it back on. This is a smaller diameter, and see if this looks any better, feels any better with the spacer. So let's see how it goes. Well, the paint finish wasn't flawless, but it's pretty good and fits a lot better. That's all the audio stuff done. Time for a quick blast.